What has been the most surprising ethical dilemma you have encountered, and how did you resolve it?
I've had a 30-year communication career, and over that time I've encountered in public service and work in politics all sorts of ethical dilemmas. And I think it is really important for communicators to consider how they respond. Ethics challenges the question about what we should do amid competing values. So I will pick an example from recent history, from one of the major campaigns that I'm involved with at the moment, which is how I help coordinate the government's communication response in the UK to the COVID virus. And that means considering the health interventions and how that might save lives, also the economic interventions and how that will get the economy going again and prevent people being unemployed, which has its own highly negative consequences, and then the wider impact on society. And as communicators, I think it's really important, as we have done, as we've advised ministers, scientists, the chief medical officer and other senior people about, we have to balance our communications and make sure they are ethical, because you can deliver a health outcome, stay at home, don't go out, but then the impact that has on people's economic well-being and their mental health has to be considered, and then the wider societal implications of how people operate together. So at the core of our work, and guided by the data and the evidence, has been that ethical question about how do we balance those three goals that are competing with each other naturally. How do we choose a course of action? And also recognizing in that public communication is a powerful force for good. Essentially, in the early stage of this crisis, the message to stay at home got virtually the whole nation, 60 million people, to stay at home because they recognise its importance, urgency. They listened to the government, their friends and family, and the medical advice. But delivering that sort of authority through the Prime Minister and other ministers is a great ethical responsibility, which I know bears on the politicians as well as us as communication experts.
Why are you speaking for ethics at this Helsinki Ethics conference? And what is your key message to our professional industry, people who are deliberately trying to usually tell a very positive message, but we are challenged at this time?
I think there are a number of reasons why it is close to my heart. A slightly offbeat reason would be the fact that one of my favourite television serials is a programme called The Wire about crime in Baltimore in the United States. And there's a famous line in that series about every man must have a code, because it deals with the ethical dilemmas about growing up in a difficult, tough inner city and how you respond to that. A more serious reason, and to that point about every man and woman must have a code, is certainly in a career in public service. I found that unless there are really strong underlying principles that guide your actions and your interpretation of the evidence, you cannot succeed, and sooner or later will fall into a trap of doing something that is unethical because you sleepwalked into it. Now, I'm very proud to be a UK civil servant, and underpinning the work of the civil service is the Civil Service Code. Now, that demands of us honesty and integrity and objectivity and impartiality. The honesty bit is easy to understand, being truthful and open. Integrity means putting public service goals above personal ones. Objectivity is basing your actions on evidence and advice, and impartiality is operating purely on the merits of the case. And I hope and believe that those are the principles that we deploy in our communication work. But that code is so important to guiding your actions. And sometimes we don't know the ethical outcome of our actions. We have to be guided by the evidence that is central to making any decision. But the code plus the evidence gives you a course of action that I hope in hindsight and at the time is ethical and reasonable. And I think that sort of operation is essential to great communications, which can have a really powerful effect in moving people and organisations and communities and nations in a particular direction. But unless you have those strong foundations, you don't really know where you're going or where you're going to end up.
If you need to summarize your professional ethical behavior into a rule of thumb, How would you describe it?
I think I would summarize it as, what is our communication objective, and is it in the public interest? And that, I think, you can develop for many organizations, but thinking through where any action or campaign or intervention will end and the effect it will have, I think, is the strongest way of judging whether it is likely to be effective, whether it is ethical, and whether it is the right thing to do. Another way of looking at it would be to say, well, what is the alternative, and how could we work through that? Fundamentally, that focus on objectives underpinned by a strong code of behaviour and thinking through what will work is absolutely critical. And this will differ between different societies and nations. I'm always aware that when I talk about the use of behavioural science in a UK context, which I believe is powerful for getting people to live longer lives through having the right diet or stay safe on the roads, through our Think driving campaign for safe driving, the use of behavioural science in getting citizens to change their behaviour has a more sinister connotation in countries that have lived under fascist or communist dictatorships for many years. So at the heart of what I do is absolutely the use of public information, transparently delivered to allow citizens to make choices that they believe are in their best interest. But we also use behavioural science and other tools to influence their behaviour for what we believe, based on the evidence, based on our code and our moral framework, is the public good.
Thank you, Alex. That was wonderful. I really love to see you in Helsinki. And let me tell you, you are an icon for a lot of us, and we look forward to hearing more of you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. As you asked me, Christina, thanks for organising the conference. It's important. I have a lot more to say then, but it's a great thing, and we should absolutely look forward to it.